In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, North Carolina, the sun set over neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences. It was a community where neighbors exchanged pleasantries and children played freely. But beneath the surface, tension simmered, ignited by one woman's obsession. Clara Mitchell, the president of the Homeowners Association, HOA, had always been a stickler for rules. To some, she was a guardian of order. To others, a tyrant. Her latest target was Judge Nathaniel Brooks, a man who had moved to Maplewood seeking peace after a long career in the courtroom. Little did he know, his life was about to become a battleground. It all began with a complaint about his porch light. "It stays on too late," Clara had declared one evening, clipboard in hand. Nathaniel, taken aback, had tried to reason with her. "It's for security. It turns off at midnight." But Clara was relentless. Soon, letters began to arrive, each one more petty than the last. Hedges too tall, mailbox color incorrect, and even Noyes complained about his niece practicing the saxophone. As the weeks passed, Nathaniel felt the weight of Clara's scrutiny. Neighbors whispered about her obsession, but no one dared confront her. "She's just doing her job," they would say, avoiding the truth that was becoming increasingly clear. Clara was fixated on him. One evening, after a particularly tense HOA meeting, Nathaniel decided enough was enough. He approached Clara directly. "This has gone too far. Your complaints are harassment." Clara's eyes narrowed, and a smirk crept across her face. "You think you're above everyone else, Judge? You don't belong here." Those words echoed in Nathaniel's mind long after he returned home. He installed security cameras, hoping to capture any further harassment. But what he found was chilling. Clara lurking outside his property, taking notes, and muttering to herself as summer approached. The tension escalated. One humid night, Nathaniel awoke to the smell of smoke. Panic surged through him as he realized his house was on fire. He stumbled through the thick smoke, grabbing only his briefcase before escaping into the night. Outside, neighbors gathered, their faces illuminated by the flames consuming his home. The fire department arrived, but it was too late. Nathaniel watched helplessly as his memories turned to ash. The investigation revealed traces of accelerant near the fence line, and all evidence pointed to Clara. When detectives confronted her, they found a half-empty gas can in her garage. The community was in shock. The woman they had trusted to uphold their neighborhood standards had crossed a line no one thought possible. As Clara was led away in handcuffs, Nathaniel felt a mix of anger and sadness. His home was gone, but the real loss was the trust that had been shattered. Days later, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the trial began. Reporters filled the gallery, eager to witness the fallout of this unprecedented case. Nathaniel, now the judge presiding over the trial, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had spent his life seeking justice, but now he was faced with personal vendetta. Clara's lawyer entered a plea of not guilty, despite the overwhelming evidence. Nathaniel's heart raced as he listened to the testimonies of neighbors who had witnessed Clara's obsession. Linda Garvey, a retired teacher, spoke of the fear that had gripped the community. She was always watching him, she said, her voice trembling. "I knew something bad was coming." As the trial progressed, Nathaniel struggled with his role. Was he being fair? Would the community see him as biased? But he pressed on, determined to uphold the law. The prosecution laid out a compelling case, detailing the events leading up to the fire and the evidence that tied Clara to crime. When the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts, relief washed over Nathaniel. Clara's face twisted in disbelief as the reality of her actions sank in. She had tried to erase him, but justice had prevailed. At sentencing, Nathaniel stood before Clara, his voice steady. "You chose hate and violence, and now you must face the consequences." The gavel struck, sealing her fate. 22 years in prison as Nathaniel left the courthouse. He felt a sense of closure. The flames of obsession had burned his home, but they had also ignited a fire within the community. Neighbors began to speak out against hatred, realizing that silence only allowed it to grow. In the months that followed, Nathaniel rebuilt his life. The scars of the fire remained, but he found solace in the support of his community. They rallied around him, offering help and friendship, reminding him that even in the darkest times, there is light. Clara's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of obsession and prejudice. Nathaniel knew that justice had been served, but the real victory lay in the strength of community that refused to let hate define them. As he stood in the ruins of his home, Nathaniel whispered a promise to himself and to the memory of his late wife, Sarah. We're still standing. That's enough. And with that, he turned to face the future, ready to rebuild not just his house, but the trust and love that made a home. Months passed and the community began to heal. Nathaniel organized neighborhood gatherings, encouraging residents to come together and share their stories. The fire had taken his home, but it had also ignited a sense of unity among the neighbors. They began to realize that they had allowed Clara's obsession to fester unchecked, and it was time to reclaim their community. One evening, as Nathaniel stood in front of a small crowd at the community center, he spoke passionately about the importance of vigilance and compassion. We cannot let fear dictate our lives, he urged. We must stand together against hatred and intolerance. Let this be a lesson for all of us. The crowd erupted in applause, and Nathaniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had always believed in justice, but now he understood the power of community. Together, they could create a safe haven, a place where everyone felt valued and respected. As the seasons changed, Nathaniel began to rebuild his home. With the help of his neighbors, they cleared the debris and laid the foundation for a new house. Each brick represented not just a structure, but a testament to resilience and hope. The community rallied around him, offering their skills and labor, and soon the house began to take shape. During this time, Nathaniel also found solace in his work. He continued to serve as a judge, but with newfound perspective. He approached each case with empathy, understanding that behind every crime was a story, a life affected by choices. His experiences with Clara had deepened his commitment to justice, and he became an advocate for mental health resources in the community. As the new house neared completion, Nathaniel decided to host a housewarming party. He wanted to celebrate not just the rebuilding of his home, but the rebuilding of trust and community spirit. Invitations went out and excitement buzzed through Maplewood on the day of the party. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. Nathaniel stood at the entrance of his new home, welcoming neighbors as they arrived with dishes to share. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, Nathaniel felt a sense of peace. As the evening wore on, he gathered everyone in the living room. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady. This house is not just a structure. It's a symbol of our resilience. Together, we have faced darkness, but we have emerged stronger. Let's continue to support one another and ensure that our community remains a safe haven for all. Cheers erupted, and Nathaniel felt a swell of gratitude. He looked around at the faces of his neighbors, friends who had stood by him through the toughest times. They had turned a tragedy into a triumph. And he knew that together, they could face anything that as the night drew to a close, Nathaniel stepped outside to take a breath of fresh air. The stars twinkled above, and he felt a sense of hope for the future. Clara's actions had tried to tear him down, but they had only strengthened his resolve to protect his community. In the month that followed, Nathaniel continued to advocate for mental health awareness and community engagement. He organized workshops and discussions, encouraging open dialogue about the importance of kindness and understanding. The neighborhood flourished, and the scars of the past began to fade. Clara's story became a cautionary tale, but also served as a reminder of the power of community. Nathaniel knew that while hatred could ignite flames, love and unity could rebuild what was lost. And as he looked out at the vibrant neighborhood he had helped nurture, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. In the end, Nathaniel Brooks had not only rebuilt his home, he had rekindled the spirit of Maplewood. Together, they had transformed the story of obsession and destruction into one of resilience, hope, and the unwavering strength of community. And as he stood in his new home, surrounded by friends and neighbors, he whispered a promise to himself and to the memory of his late wife, Sarah. We're still standing. That's enough.